the average person will spend 90,000 hours of their lifetime working at work. So do you want to like get to the end of your life and have spent your 90,000 hours miserable? Like in a toxic workplace, burnt out, like not doing what you want to do, not doing what you love? Like no, the answer to that for me is like absolutely not, you know? So like if we can't get that time back. There we can make more money. We can always make more money. We cannot get that time back.
You're listening to Give Yourself Some Leeway with me, your host, Eugene Lee. Over the last 5 years, through my burnout experience, podcasting, and coaching, I have learned a lot about burnout recovery as a high achiever. What to do, what not to do, and the common mistakes that many people, like myself, make along the way. This podcast is dedicated to help you break the burnout cycle. Optimize your life for peak performance when you need it most, and rediscovering how to truly enjoy living again. That's the key to your growth and success. Shaté, welcome to Give Yourself Some Leeway, and thank you again for taking the time to join the show today.
Thanks so much for having me, Eugene. I'm excited to be talking about burnout with you today.
Awesome. Where I really want to start with is your background as a professional dancer and choreographer, because I have so many friends who are in the music and theater industry, and it is such a brutal industry. I mean, the amount of auditions and trying to build up a portfolio of projects. And before transitioning into your career as a career coach, the experience that you must have gotten from being in such a brutal industry definitely played a role in your transition to becoming a career coach. So tell me a bit about that, your experience as a professional dancer.
I adored being a professional dancer. You know, I've been dancing my entire life, like since I was like 3. And so there was so much of my identity that was seeped into being a dancer, which we'll chat about later. Just I definitely don't recommend, but it's so much of like who I am still. Like I'm still people still are like, oh, you're dancing, right? Like, you know, it's just so much of a part of sort of my being. And I had such a great time in that career. I was able to do tons of performance and traveling and teaching. I connected with so many amazing people. I love musical theater, so I was able to choreograph a good bit of that. And I enjoyed it so much, but I definitely worked myself into a burnout because I loved it so much and because I was so like, you know, I got to make this happen and I got to make this happen now. And so let me try to do everything in my power instead of sort of having a more um, present, trusting, you know, experience or process with that. But yeah, I loved it. And it was also very brutally difficult. Like it was rejection. I cried so much. I often was like, okay, where's the next project or the next, you know, job going to come from? I had a mega hustle, was always looking for the next work. Like it was definitely very hard, but I gotta be honest and say that it was rewarding because it was like it was a dream that came true for me. So it was like, oh, well, this actually happened, and I think everybody should feel this sort of fulfillment.
Is that something that you feel that everyone has to go through at some stage in life, that they have to go through that level of hardship and grit and just putting the all the hours in? And like you have to go through the grind at some point so that life gets easier.
I think people love to say like we all got to pay our dues. I think there's some version of that because the truth is, Eugene, like we all have to go through some form of something, whether it's career or life, because those challenges and hardships are what grow us up. They're what develop our character, they develop our strength. So we all have to go through something. There's no such thing as like a perfect life or a perfect person. So I'm gonna go ahead and say, like, even though I sort of have mixed feelings about it, I do think like everyone's got to do some version of like putting their time in. Does it have to be brutal? Not necessarily, but I think, you know, the part that makes it tough is like you're constantly putting yourself out there, you're putting your heart on your sleeve for someone to judge it and say, like, no, that's not good enough, or no, not this, or not this time, or there's this, you know, I remember projects where I was like, oh, I love this project so much, I have to get it, I want it so bad, and then it'd be like, nope, you're not getting it. You know, you've gone through this really long, exhaustive process for months on end, and you've put your heart into it, and you've done everything you possibly can, and you networked, and you know, like you did everything that you could have, and it was still just like know it went to someone else. So I think, yeah, those things, while they are really tough, everybody has to go through some version of it, I think.
Yeah, I feel similar at that. It's kind of, you need to put yourself on the line, and you have to experience the discomfort,
Yep.
but also knowing your full your capacity. So you're not overextending yourself and being like, well, if I don't get this, I'm going to be on the verge of death. It's like, if I don't get this, the worst thing that's going to happen is I might have to try somewhere else. I might learn something along the way. I might learn how I react in the face of failure also, and
Mm-hmm.
how hard I let it hit me, or
Mm-hmm.
take its toll on me,
Yeah.
and kind of how you emotionally regulate when you get handed, oh, better luck next time, or something
Yeah.
like that. It's like, how do you regulate that? Because I've even seen in some people who are doing internships, and as soon as they have their 11-month contract, and then there's expecting a renewal, and only 1 out of 3 gets the renewal. And next thing, in the last 3 months before they leave, the ones who didn't get it start to do the bare minimum, or else they start disrespecting their manager. And I'm like, you're never going to get a call back. Or if the other
Mm-hmm.
person pulls out or rejects the offer or tries to negotiate and gets rejected, you're not going to get that call.
Exactly. Yep. There's literally, you said so much really great stuff there. One, yes, you're always interviewing or always auditioning. Like even if you already have the job, if you're it's almost you're literally always applying for the next thing because everybody's watching what you're doing. And so that's the key to the next step. And then I also, the other thing that you're sort of like alluding to that I did not do a great job of, especially in my dance career, is like I didn't have this healthy detachment that's needed. Like you want to be all in and invested and do everything that you can, but in order for us to like sustain it and keep going, you have to have a certain amount of healthy detachment. You got to take breaks. You got to take pauses. You got to, like think about something else. Go live your life a little bit and then come back to it so that you can persevere in a way that's like healthy for your body and your mind and your spirit.
And coming back to the dancing, uh, pursuing something like dancing, it feels like you're pursuing your passion. Like, I mean, it's part of your identity almost.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, something that's so so connected to your soul. Being in that's something that I have found from like music and theater. It's something that is so very personal, and then turning that into your career, it's very hard to detach from that also, because
Yeah.
every rejection feels like someone's rejecting you for who you are. So it
Mm-hmm.
can take its toll a bit more, it can be a bit tougher.
Yep, yep, it really does. I mean, and that's sort of the tricky part of it. And I think that's also why a lot of people prefer to how do I say this? There are some people who actually don't want to get paid doing the thing that they love. They want it to be just for them, the thing that they escape to. And so I can really understand that. While I prefer to like make a living doing what I love, I can understand that separation for that very reason that you just said. Yeah.
Yeah, and the reason why I bring this up is because I see this a lot in entrepreneurship, where people are sick of working their 9 to 5, and they go to pursue their passion, but they choose something that they're so passionate about that they've never accepted payment for it before, but now
Yeah.
they want to make a living off of it. But they go in with the energy of, I love this so much, I don't care if I never get paid for this. And then they never try to make a sale or never try to fully make it a successful business for them. And they pour all of their energy into that passion. And then when they completely exhaust themselves and they're not seeing the returns, they say, "Well, I thought this was my passion. Why am I burning out when I'm pursuing my passion and I'm not seeing any returns for all the efforts I'm making?" And they go back into the same burnout cycle, sometimes even worse than when they
Mm-hmm.
were working their 9 to 5. And it crushes them because they thought they were pursuing something that was so close to their identity, so close to who they thought of themselves as a person, and realize, why am I failing at this thing that I thought was my life's passion?
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely something that happens with people. I think one of the reasons that happens is people um get really caught up in pricing for whatever reason. Like, how do you do it? I don't want to be too low, I don't want to be too high. But it's really just an exchange for the value that you're putting out into the world. And so you have to you have to get paid for that. Otherwise, it's a hobby. And so, like, then why are you doing it? If it's just a hobby, then keep your regular job and then just do this for fun and don't worry about how to monetize it. But if you are trying to monetize it, you have to charge what you're worth and charge it and like really create the value for other people and then be able to be open to receiving, that monetary exchange and return so that you can keep going, so that you can go on to serve more people and do more thing and the passion and the things that you're doing can continue to grow. So yeah, how to monetize like sort of your passions or interests or purpose. I sometimes hesitate to use those words passion and purpose because people get intimidated by it. They feel like if I don't have something that I just think about every day when I wake up, like something's wrong with me, I missed the mark, I don't have a purpose, and that can really cause some people to spiral. So, but if you do have something that you're really excited about and curious about, and you want to make a living doing it, yes, you have to be open to, you must charge something and make a living from it.
And I see a lot that people feel that because they enjoy something so much, that they don't want to charge for it because they feel that, oh, if I charge for it, it's going to take away the joy, or if I make a business out of this, it's going to take away the joy that I get from doing my passion project.
Mhm.
And oftentimes it's like if you open a bakery and you just gave away all of your cakes for free. It's like,
Mhm.
okay, well, I'm not going to be in the bakery for long, but people see free cakes, they're going to question the quality of the cake. It's like, oh, why are you giving away cakes for free? Where they
What's
would
wrong with
rather
them? Mhm.
support a high quality cake and see you in business for a long time. And
Yep.
I think that's the mindset shift that people need when they are pursuing their passion, but they don't have the business mindset for that passion, or they don't put
Mhm.
in the work to break the minds or the gap, the knowledge gap between making your passion into a business.
Yeah, there's so much that I could even touch on there, like the perception, to your point, when people just think about like Louis Vuitton and how much people are willing to pay for bags and things of that nature, and then not only are they willing to pay for it, but the perception of the value of it, like, oh, it must be so much worth it. I'm reading that book, I think it's 100 million, I think I have it
Alec
here.
Hermosi, is it?
Yep.
Yeah.
When he's talking
Hmm.
about the offers and how like there was some study that someone did and they had like three of the same product and they were just priced differently. I think it was the wine example, and it was like the folks who were in this study, not knowing that the wines were exactly the same, perceived that the one that was priced higher was the better quality wine when it was actually the same one as the one that was lower priced. So it really matters. People, like, if you're under lowballing yourself or not charging at all, people are just like not gonna not really see the value in it either.
And for people who want to transition in their careers, similar, I suppose, for you going from professional dancing to becoming a career coach, was there a crossover between being a dancer and choreographer to becoming a career coach?
1000%. I think there usually is. Like, I've not seen any situation where there's not been much of a crossover between, even if it's not something that you've been paid for, like by an employer. I think all the things that we're doing in our life, we're volunteering, we're helping family members do it, things we're just personally curious about and their passion projects and hobbies. We can leverage that to have like an actual career pivot or transition. For me, it started in grad school, and I was at the last minute asked to be a teaching assistant for this career course for undergraduates. And so I got into this course and was like, oh my gosh, I love this, because I was finally able to share with someone else all the things I wish I had known when I was starting out as a dancer. And I knew absolutely like nothing. I just went to LA with like $300, and the internet wasn't really, it was a thing, but it wasn't like, there wasn't like tons of articles to like point you in the right direction. There was content marketing wasn't a thing, I'll say that. And so you kind of had to like figure out, you had to be connected to the right person who was connected to the right person to like find your way. And I just started, the dancers would find out that I had this background of a commercial career before I went to grad school, and they'd be like, oh, can you help me, like, tell me more. I'm trying to figure out if I want to do that too. And so then I started blogging and I built this body of work called The Working Dancer. And I was just everything I wish I had known, I was putting there. So how to do your taxes, things about auditioning was kind of prevalent, and it still is, but also like when to turn down a paycheck, when to pass on jobs that don't align with who you are, how to show up as a professional and get more work, where to look for work, like how to build a freelance, dance career. I was just putting all of it there. So when I started to feel like I was ready to transition, which also caught me by surprise, to be honest. I was kind of like, oh, snap, like I'm not going to dance anymore. I used to scoff at people who said they were former dancers, like former. Why would anyone be former dancer? Like who would quit this job? But then one day I was evolving as a person, and I wanted a different lifestyle. I didn't want to be traveling all the time. I wanted to be in place, and I wanted to buy a house, and I wanted to. So I let it go. And at first I didn't really know what I was going to do next, to be honest. I was just like, I know I'm evolving into something else. So just need space to figure it out. But during even that time, I was still coaching and helping dancers and other creatives figure out how to build their careers. And then once I finally got clear and started doing some internal reflection, like, okay, I actually do love helping people with their careers. I actually do love being connected to higher education, like listing these things. And then this, opportunity to become a career coach really opened up, and it was just like really perfect for me.
A lot that you covered there was the things that we do outside of our business or outside of our 9 to 5. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of the things I see people who are stuck in a job but they don't know what to do next, and they
Yeah.
say, I always tell them to volunteer
Mm-hmm.
or pursue something in your community, help out in some way. And they're saying, oh, but what if I don't like it? And I was like, well, that's the fastest way for you to find out what you don't want to do.
Yep.
And that narrows down what you might like to do instead.
Yep.
So it's about when people say they want to pursue their passion but they don't know what their purpose is, and I say
Mm-hmm.
get out there, contribute in some way. It doesn't have to be an online course. Go out to your community and see who's looking for volunteers, who's looking for help in some way, and see how you can contribute in some way. Maybe you can offer value to someone else, and you might find that even if you think you're not a people person, maybe you can help out in some way and find out, oh, I don't have to be the center of attention in order to help out in the community.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen people who thought that they were like hermits and completely isolated and just want to stay remote work and stay under a blanket, to be like, you know what, I actually like helping at a coffee talk or organizing events,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't need to be the center of attention. I don't need to be the key speaker to organize the event. And it just opened up a whole new world for them, that
Yeah.
there are other ways rather than fully going into a university degree or fully going into jumping down a new career path, not knowing what's ahead of them. It's
Mm-hmm.
great that some people can take the leap, but for those who cannot take that leap, there are smaller ways, 1% margins that they can take with less risk to figure out what works for them and what doesn't work for them. Is there
Mm.
anything else that you feel in your experience might be a 1% change that someone could make if they want to make a career transition, but they don't know exactly what just yet?
I love that question. And I think the suggestions that you mentioned are spot on. So I've seen people take, experience that from volunteering at like their churches, or from, I helped one client leverage the fact that she was like the case manager for a child with special needs, and put that on a resume and help parlay that into a job. Like you literally can use anything. I would say in terms of what folks can do, the best thing is to be out there like sort of testing and having conversations. So volunteering, um, having conversations with folks who are doing things that you find interesting or intriguing, just so that you can learn a little bit more about the work. The other thing is, I think a lot of people do sort of like this external, like, what can I do? And so they start looking outside of themselves. And I would say the number one place to start, and this is a step a lot of people skip over, is like this internal piece. Like you've got to really do some internal reflection, have a little bit more self-awareness, and that's going to be your best marker for guiding you for where you want to go next. And so that could look like doing some strengths assessments to see like what are the things that maybe you are overlooking that come naturally to you, that like you're like, oh yeah, I like to ask people all the time, like, what would you do every day if you didn't have to work? Like, how would you spend your time? That's actually a cue or a clue. It could be like, what are the things that you find interesting, you're curious about? What are the things that like make you mad or break your heart? Like all of those are clues for you to like do a little bit more pulling and nudging around. And I would say you have to like sort of research, like put some of those things together. What if you couple your strengths with like some of the things that move you into some keywords and like just start to research and see what kind of jobs come up and then just have conversations around them. So it's really just more about exploration, like and self-discovery, quite honestly.
And we were talking just before we started recording about how we're human beings, not
Mm-hmm.
human doings. And you
Mm-hmm.
mentioned how you can be your way, not do your way to finding a fulfilling career. So how would
Mm-hmm.
you say how can you be your way
Yeah.
to a fulfilling career as opposed to doing, let's say, all these actions? How,
Yeah.
is it about finding yourself, as you said, trying to find your inner purpose, your inner being?
Yes, 1000%. It's all about the self-discovery. So the typical approach that people take is they say, huh, um, I think project managers, that job sounds cool. Let me go get a Scrum certification or a PMP or like all of these things. Let me go spend all this money and like prove my worth and get all these certifications. I'm just gonna do. And then I'm gonna over network my way into a job. I'm gonna apply to 1,000 jobs and then, then I'm gonna become a project manager and I'm gonna love that job. And then sometimes folks get into those things that they've worked super hard for, and for whatever reason, there's something missing. And instead, start with the self-discovery, like be who you are, because that is going to be the path of the least resistance. It's going to be the path that has the most flow. And so instead of going out and having to get a ton of certifications, for example, or having to like overwork yourself into something, you will just be being who you are. I think there's a even a book that's like do like something like do who you are, like be who you are, kind of in sort of a career lens. And it's literally just like paying attention to those things that are come naturally to you, that are your strengths, that are your core interests. Do those things, like literally just be who you are and let the work evolve from that place.
It's like, how do you put it? Um, where we have people, let's say, chasing all the titles, all the job titles, as you said, going for a project manager, things like, oh, that looks cool, I want to get that job title, rather than
Mm-hmm.
seeing what works for me or what's congruent with my values. A
Yes.
lot of the time I ask people like, what are your values? And
Mm-hmm.
there's like, oh, like no one ever asked me that before. I've just been chasing the the career ladder, or trying to
Right.
progress. Or oftentimes I always get these LinkedIn notifications for start your MBA today. And it's
Yeah.
like, you don't even know what I do. It's like, but yes, MBA is the way forward in your career. And it's like, and I know people who've pursued MBAs because they felt stuck. And next thing they come out of the MBA and they're like, I have this fancy degree, but I have absolutely no idea what I want to do with it. I have no
Yeah.
idea where I want to go. And
Yeah.
oftentimes it's because they've been told the story of this is what you need if you want to take your career to the next level, but they don't know where they want to go in their career. They've just been told that this is the next step forward, rather than looking in and seeing what do I really want to do? Where do I want to see myself in the next 5 to 10 years? And
Mhm.
I think when we had the pandemic and the lockdown, a lot of people were able to take that step back and reassess for themselves. It gave them that break, that mindset shift to be like, hang on a second, I don't need to be in the office all the time. I can look at different opportunities. And I think that's what we need more of. We need not something as drastic, but we need people to be able to take a step back and do a life assessment, just do a reassessment of where they are they happy where they are, and
Mhm.
there is an opportunity for them to make a transition. just because you've been pursuing an MBA or pursuing studying medicine for the past 10 years doesn't mean you need to be a doctor, or it doesn't mean you need to be a financial analyst or a business admin.
Yeah.
That you can be a musician, you can go and work in volunteer in a shelter, or you can buy a business, but buy what do they call them?
Franchise.
Recession resistant businesses,
Yeah, yeah,
like a
yeah.
laundromat or
Mm-hmm.
an elevator repair service or something. It's
Yeah.
like you can pursue all of these other ideas too. It does not have to be a desk job.
It doesn't. Yeah, you're spot on, with the pandemic in terms of like that prompted, they were calling it the great resignation, where people were like, I gotta my job has to be aligned with my values and who I am. And so many people quit their jobs. And, for the first time, I think probably ever in a long time, the employee had the leverage, they had the upper power. And then now I'm reading that it's something called the entrepreneur's exodus, right? Like folks are like, I don't even want to do this sort of 9 to 5 corporate thing anymore. I'm going to start my own thing. And if that suits the person, sure. But more than anything, I think based on how we were taught, in my opinion, at least where I grew up, when we were young in primary school, exposed to like career day, for example, you get this couple of professionals to come in, and it's like the police officer, and then a firefighter, and then there's the astronaut, and like like a couple of other staple careers, and like we're sort of given this platter of, like, there's a teacher, this platter of, these are some jobs. What do you want to be when you grow up? And then we're sort of choosing then the one that sounds the most impressive, the one that makes the most money, the one that like all of these external factors around choosing what we're going to do for a living, when really, like, we have the answers ourselves. I heard someone ask a group of folks recently, like, how many of us have these college majors that you're not using anymore because someone else suggested it for you? They thought it'd be good, it sounded great, that you'd be great at it, and then you get in it and you're like, I hate this, and now you don't use it anymore. Like, so many of us have that experience where we're sort of hopping from the next thing to the next thing to the next thing, probably looking for validation, probably looking for status, looking for more money, looking for, all of these out external things that might make us happy, when really, and happy is such a, can be a superficial word. I'm not talking about like happiness of feeling. I'm talking about joy, inner peace, like a alignment is actually what I'm talking about. And all of that starts within us. That's like not something that you're going to get looking anywhere else but within yourself.
Yeah, I love that clarification as well between joy and happiness. It's
Mm-hmm.
like a lot of people look for happiness, but happiness happens. It
Mm-hmm.
happens, it's fleeting.
It's
And
fleeting.
that's the best thing about happiness, is that it's you get the euphoria, but
Mm-hmm.
it you enjoy it in the moment. And but then joy comes from within. And
Yes.
it comes from a place of gratitude, fulfillment, and alignment, as you said. And
Mm-hmm.
they're the things that people don't want to do because they take a bit more effort. We have to look internally. One of the most painful things during the lockdown was that a lot of people had to sit with themselves in silence, or actually sit alone with their thoughts. And they were like, I can't do this. I need a distraction. I need my Netflix. I need my music. I need some kind of distraction. I need to get to the gym, something to distract me. I can't just sit alone in my thoughts. And that's exactly what people need to do, because they look for the dopamine fix, they look for the distractions, they're doom scrolling and everything. And it's like, if you just sit with yourself for a second and be like, where are you in life? Are you happy where you're at? And if you're not, what do you need to do in order to make that change? And it's
Yeah.
uncomfortable, it's raw, and it can be very emotionally draining at first, because you're accessing parts of yourself that you normally wouldn't, because you're
Mm-hmm.
distracting yourself from it, you're running away from it. But once you do address and be like, I feel more fulfilled about what I do if I address A, B, and C. And
Yep.
I think that's what a lot of us, and definitely something that the two of us have addressed. Otherwise, we
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't be here. But it's about finding that fulfillment and alignment to pursue what you love.
Yep. Absolutely. That's so important.
So, how do you, from your experience, how do you like to listen to your body? So because we both overcome burnout, how do you like to? What's your way? Because I was always told when I completely burnt out, it's almost
Mhm.
5 years ago now, it was everyone was saying, "Oh, meditate or do yoga or do all these things," and they gave me a long list of things to do. And me
Yeah.
being a high achiever, I was like, "Okay, there's about 20 things here to do. If I do all of them, burnout will be gone." And then I overwhelmed myself with all of the activities I was trying to do all at once to get rid of this burnout thing. When all I had to do was, after a lot of trial and error, was take a step back, stop overwhelming myself, and choose one thing and focus on one thing at a time. I was like, and
Yeah.
then figure out which worked for me and which didn't. So, what worked for you?
Yeah, so my burnout was maybe about 16 years ago. So like 2008 was, and I kind of thought like, is this what a depression is? Like I just my not, nothing was making me happy. I was just like tired. Well, one thing is I was working overnight at a hotel so that I could be available for auditions during the day, and then I would sleep for a couple hours, and I go to classes. And what I just noticed was like I was just like angry at everything, and my friends were like, what's wrong with you? Like, why are you just like Oscar the Grouch? And, like just nothing made me genuinely like happy. I wasn't satisfied with anything. And so finally I was just like, I quit everything. I'm doing too much. Like I'm not getting where I want to go. So I'm not going to dance anymore, which, obviously wasn't a thing. But I ended up moving back to my parents' home in Texas, and I slept for like a month. Like I literally just had to sleep and start before I started feeling like myself again. And so now when it comes to like listening to my body so that I can avoid being in whatever angry, overworked place I was, it is literally like I would just push through before. Like whatever I was feeling, if I was tired, whatever it was, if it was discomfort, whatever, I just pushed through it. And now I am so much better about not pushing through. Like even today, I had a slower start because it was like, oh, the weather is really heavy. And like today is like a really big day in America. And there's like so many feelings around election day. And like, it's just like so much going on. So I was like, okay, I'm not going to try to force my way through this. Before, like my routine is usually like I'm going to jog in the morning and I'm going to do all this list of things to get my day started. And today I was like, all I have is a walk in me. I'm not even going to force myself to jog. I'm going to sleep maybe a couple of extra minutes. I am going to meditate today and actually put on the music because my anxiety is probably going to be like all over the place. So it's not necessarily adhering to a list of things. It's sort of like going where my body is nudging me. And so if that's like a little walk, if that's like a little stretch, if it's just to stop and breathe and meditate for a second, maybe it's just to be and sit in quiet. I am an introvert, and so sometimes just all of the stimulation from meetings and pings and text messages and all of that, like sometimes it's just like to turn it all off and just be for a second so that I can slow down, right? Catch my breath, catch up to myself, and then have a little bit something to like keep going.
So again, that's coming back to being in tune with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Again, listening to your body,
Mm-hmm.
and not so much distracting yourself, as you said. I'm pushing yourself past your limits, just pushing through. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's something that from Alex Hermosi and the whole hustle culture, there
Mm-hmm.
is the toxic side of that where people just see like, oh no, just need to keep on pushing through, or keep on going past your limits, and that's the
Yeah.
only way to pursue forward. But there's also the element of no, you need to listen to your body, because
Yeah.
if you don't take care of yourself, no matter how much you push yourself past your limit, you're not going to be performing at your best. And I've seen people do their like 3 to 4 hours of sleep because they say, "Oh, I'm hustling, I'm doing two shifts and hustling." But I'm like, but how are you showing up? You're probably
Mm-hmm.
showing up and you look like bags under your eyes, and the your skin's just sagging, and you're trying to show up to other people and try to get them to sign up to your gym or trying to offer different health benefits, but you look absolutely shattered yourself. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
how are you showing up for those people if this is how you're treating yourself? You also need to listen to your body so that you can say, look, I'm a living example of what I'm trying to teach here. And
Yeah.
I think that's the side of it where there's a healthy balance between yes, you put in the action and you can hustle for what you want to achieve, but you need to listen to your body along that way. You need to be in the long game rather than
Yeah.
looking at this as, oh, I'm constantly sprinting and constantly putting the ceiling a little bit higher. And next thing you get completely overwhelmed and you're gone beyond your capacity. You need to look at, this is where I want to go. If I'm giving myself a year or 2 years or 5 years to get there, how much rest do I need to give my body in order to get there? Or what's my capacity now? And it's like, okay, let's add a 1% margin to that over a period of time, rather
Yeah.
than saying, I'm going hell for leather for the next 3 months and I'll reassess after 3 months where I'm at.
Yeah. I think the pushing past your limits thing, it's got to be, you got to take it in context. Like there, I agree with you. Like there, like we were saying before, like there's got to be some sort of healthy detachment from it. So pushing past your limits, sure, push past like any perceived limits, like any boxes that you put yourself in. Sure, push past what you thought was possible. Like try to beat your best. Like if I am able to, jog for 2 miles today, maybe 1% more I can try it tomorrow. Like that's a healthy way to push past the limit. But if your body is actively like, no, I need to rest and recover, that's not something you want to ignore. If your energy, like your emotions, whatever it is, like because your body tells you, it's like really smart, and if you don't listen to it, it will shut down, and then you're sick, and then you can't do actually what you want. So the whole like depriving your body of what it needs, your mind, your spirit of what it needs, is actually counterproductive to like the resilience and the perseverance and the stick to itiveness that you need to like actually achieve really, really audacious goals. And so it's so important for us to, yes, go hard when it's time to go hard. And then also like just slow down a little bit when you need. There's like a season for everything, right? There's a moment for everything. And some days it might be like, let me just breathe for a little bit and like let me go hard again for the next couple of days. There's got to be some balance, there's got to be some detachment, and you absolutely have to listen to your body. Otherwise it's gonna do what it wants to do anyway. It's gonna shut you down if you don't listen to it.
Yeah, because I've experienced that even as well. People are saying, oh, why don't I spend more hours on my coaching or podcast? And I'm like, I have my job as an engineer as well.
Mm-hmm.
I also have my time that I dedicate for podcasting. I have my boundary on when I do podcasting, and they're like, "Oh, but you need to make more hours so that you can be on more podcasts around the world and all this." And I'm like, "No, this is my podcasting time. If it fits in that, that's when I show up at my best for the podcast.
Yeah.
For coaching, this is the time slot that I have so that I show up my best for clients and that I show up the best for myself also, so that I serve at my best capacity. And then for my day job, and as an engineer with a lot of traveling, I'm like, I need to show up my best because I'm dealing face to face with customers. I'm not going to show up absolutely wrecked from everything else that I do and at the customer's expense. And at my company's expense also, that I want to show up at my best at all times. And for that, I need to set boundaries around the things that I do and the things that I enjoy also. That you need to
Mm-hmm.
have non-negotiables in place. It's not about, I've come across, someone asked me this question recently about what are the sacrifices you make out of a sense of duty? And
Mm.
straight up, I was like, I'm not answering that question head on because that question alone has a lot of red flags for me. Because
Mm-hmm.
as soon as you say to yourself, what are the sacrifices I'm making out of a sense of duty? That question alone harbors a lot of resentment. That
Yeah.
if you're saying I have to make all of these sacrifices
Mm-hmm.
because I have a duty to do this, it's like a parent saying, I make all of these sacrifices in my personal life because I have a duty as a parent to my child.
Yeah.
And straight up, that harbors a lot of resentment. So I got them to rephrase that question to, what are the non negotiables I have in order to keep my sense of integrity? So it's like,
Mm.
what are the things that I value most? And
Mm-hmm.
what are the non negotiables that I put in place to maintain that integrity? And I
Yeah.
feel that was more what they were trying to ask, because they were asking, what do you keep in place so that you can show up at your best every day?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, in terms of obligation, resentment, that was a really good reframing because there are times I think when we make choices that we might, I prefer to be sleeping, but let me go, take a loved one where they need to go instead. Like those are sort of small things, but you're right in terms of the boundaries, especially the boundaries we keep that we have with ourselves, like are so incredibly important to sort of help us maintain a sense of what's the right word? It's just like balance, harmony, in the lives and the way we choose to live them.
One last thing I do want to cover before we finish up, and that's around toxic work culture. This is something that I try to target a lot on the podcast. Sometimes when I start talking about it, it it's because it's so deep within me, or it's such a personal topic that anytime I see toxicity or I hear gossip or anything in the office, I'm just like, no, not happening around me. I'm not gossiping. I'm not letting this place get toxic. And I recently did like a live on it, where I was talking about it. And while I was talking about it, I was like, okay, I'm taking this very personally here. All of these red flags that kept coming up. And I was like, I really need to tone myself down because I'm getting very emotionally charged. But how do you overcome a toxic work culture? Because like you recognize the signs and you see it all around you, but sometimes it feels like it's so ingrained in the company already, it's hard to make that change. Or
Oh my
if even if it's a young company, what are the things that you bring that might be in your mindset already that you don't realize are toxic seeds that you're planting into the work culture? And you're like, okay, how do I get them back out? How do I cultivate a healthier work culture so that I can love the work that I do again?
Yeah, I mean, how much time you got on this toxic workplace topic?
I think
I
there's
will
a whole episode on that now.
right. I will start by saying, I believe if I'm gonna kind of relate it a little bit to like a toxic relationship, like in your personal life. So toxic then to me means like anything that is like not psychologically safe, that is like not healthy for your mental health, like it's not great for your mental health, for your mental well-being, your yeah, just psychological well-being, or maybe sometimes even unfortunately physical well-being, emotional well-being, right? And so I would probably recommend some of the things that I've heard. I'm in therapy, I believe in therapy, and I've done a lot of reading on sort of like toxic relationships and setting boundaries, how to stop being a people pleaser, like all of these sort of things as I've been in therapy myself. And I would say there's a couple of things you can do. Because one, like I think folks automatically hear toxic workplace and they think you just got to leave. You just like quit, leave the place altogether. And while that could be the case, sometimes people might not have the privilege to like just kind of up and leave right away. And so maybe you have to stick it out a little bit because you've got real life responsibilities. You got to take care of family and things like that. I would say if you can, is there a way to disrupt the toxic behavior? So if it's happening directly with a teammate, with a manager, I know that could be tricky because of the power dynamics, but whatever the thing is happening, can you set a boundary around it? Like if you don't like how someone is talking to you, can you say, hey, like I understand you're trying to communicate this, but the way you deliver it actually doesn't work for me. Like find a way to disrupt the behavior if at all possible, even if that means like if you have the opportunity to seek support from HR to help disrupt the toxic behavior. And if you're able to call it out and disrupt it and move forward, like move forward in a way that works for you, then great. Um, then there's also like seek the support, like I just said. So that could be HR, that could be seeking the support of a manager, it could be seeking the support of another sponsor or advocate that you have in the workplace to help you disrupt the toxic behavior if you're doing it yourself wasn't working. And then I think as a final step, like if none of those things are working, if you've tried to disrupt it, if you tried to get support disrupting it and nothing is working, then it actually might be time for you to like find a different place to work, whether that's a different team, whether that's a different company altogether, and get somewhere where you're like not constantly in a toxic environment because that will weigh on you. It like compromises your confidence your like esteem, like your ability to do your best work. That's going to compromise your productivity, like your engagement. All of that will just start to be impacted if you stay at a place where there's like no values or a cultural alignment with who you are.
Yeah, yeah. Again, we could do a whole episode
Mm-hmm.
on just toxic workplace alone. But
Mm-hmm.
it's important to be able to recognize when your workplace is toxic, whether it's
Yeah.
your team or could be just how your manager talks to you and your team,
Yeah.
and it's just you realize that the quality of the work hasn't changed, or your duties haven't changed, your workload hasn't changed, but you're bringing work home with you, or you're bringing this emotional
Mm-hmm.
load back with you after work, and you're like, what has changed? And sometimes people think that it's themselves. They think it's their health, or they think, oh, maybe I'm not showing up to work the way I used to. But it could be something in the environment at work
Mm-hmm.
that they have normalized, and it could be something as simple as or seem simple as people just like coming in and feeling lethargic and just and complaining through the day. And um the, or there was one thing that really stuck with me, and it was one manager who used to always say, and it was like his motto, that he would always say to his employees. He would say, you're being paid from the neck down, do what I tell you. and
Whoa.
and and then they would say that kind of jokingly, but between the team, being like, we're only paid from the neck down, just do what he says. But that was ingrained then in the team. They were completely demotivated, and they were like, oh, well, I'm just going to do bare minimum. I'm only being paid from the neck down.
Yikes.
And the whole team was affected by that. And it's like, how do you come back from that? The level of demoralization and depersonalization from the work that they do, and how do you get the level of quality back up in that team? It was like, it was beyond me that they had normalized that line, that they didn't try to retaliate in any way or defend themselves. They were like, okay, well, if that's the way we're going to be treated, this is the quality of work we're going to do.
Yeah, like that's tough because I can understand someone saying, "Well, how would you defend yourself?" Self-advocacy is not something that is necessarily talked about a lot or taught to employees. And unfortunately, managers are not taught well either how to manage and lead teams. Like you just kind of like someone's doing their job really well, and then they're just promoted and like, "Hey, you help make sure that these people do their job really well too." And there's so much training that needs to happen, I think, on both fronts. Like there needs to be a culture where team members can advocate for how they feel and what they need. And there's got to be places where like leaders are taught how to lead people and more like with more humanity. And like who wants to be working somewhere all day and like with like people you wouldn't even want to like have meals with or like talk to in real, like it's just why spend your life like that? Oh, that's the idea of it.
Yeah, people forget that how much of their lives they spend at the workplace.
Oh
It's like, oh,
my,
it's just my 9 to 5. And I'm like, yeah, that's 8 hours out of your day. That's
yes.
30% of your life for the next 40 years.
Like, listen, there's Happiness at Work, this book. It says like the average person will spend 90,000 hours of their lifetime working at work. So do you want to like get to the end of your life and have spent your 90,000 hours miserable? Like in a toxic workplace, burnt out, like not doing what you want to do, not doing what you love? Like no, the answer to that for me is like absolutely not. So like if we can't get that time back. We can make more money. We can always make more money. We cannot get that time back. And so how do you want to account for it? I think it's something we all need to like ask ourselves.
And if people want to figure out how they want to spend their 90,000 hours, how do they get in touch with you today?
Yeah, I've got a really cool resource, especially for those of us with like, backgrounds where that might be a little bit nonlinear. Like maybe we've done like these different jobs while we were trying to figure out what we were doing and like how do we make sense of the last 20 years of our career. I've got this really cool manifesto, like guide to help you work through that, like how to make sense of it, how to move forward, how to figure out what's in alignment with you so that you can move forward and have more fulfilling work. But you can find that at lightmycareermatch.com. That's lightmycareermatch.com. And then we'll be connected, and we can go from there. I'd love to support you.
Awesome. Shaté, thank you again so much for your time. It was great having you on the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Eugene. Like, these conversations are so important. So keep doing what you're doing. I really enjoyed it.
If you're feeling overwhelmed, exhausted, stuck in a rut, or running in circles all the time, trust me, I've been there too. The pursuit for peak performance, especially as a high achiever, is not about pushing harder all the time. It's about learning to work smarter, find balance, and reignite that spark that got you started in the first place. That's why I developed the Burnout Recovery Blueprint. Join me for 12 weeks to overcome your burnout. Let's break the burnout cycle and restore your vitality. Develop sustainable habits proven for peak performance when you need it most. Rediscover the meaning and purpose in the work that you do. And boost your productivity and impact without sacrificing your health. If you're ready to invest in your personal growth and success, let's break the burnout cycle together. Let's work together. Let's have that call. The link is in the show notes. Until next week, take care.